Okay, so after you install your application with the Create React app, you should see something like this. Right? And so today we talk about React fundamental. And first step, gentlemen, let's delete everything inside the source folder. Right. Just delete everything here. Okay, and then let's create in source folder one file called index.js. So remove everything inside source and create a file called index.js. So now we are actually touching how React works. It's basically just JavaScript. And to generate a React application, you need to import React, and you also need to import React DOM. And then the React DOM, you can call React DOM.render, which can render some JSX code here. Let's say div hello Redux. And you need to define which component this function render will place this code in. And that will place in this index.html at the at this div component root. So in our index.js, we define document dot get element by ID, basic HTML, and you define root here. So after you save it, you can see hello Redux on the screen. So this is just fundamental React. Okay, are you with me, guys?
Yep.
Cool. So next step, we're going to bring Redux to this application. So now we need to install some library. So in our note here at the beginning, let's copy one line here to set up the project. This line. Let's copy it and install Redux, React Redux, Redux Func, and Redux DevTool extension. So those are the libraries we needed to integrate Redux into our application. Okay, so the idea of Redux is...
which lines did you copy?
Sorry? Can you repeat your question, John? Hi, Tian. Hey, Tian, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So let me pause the recording and let Tian catch up with us. Okay, guys. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, for Tian and Jisun, we have just created a new React app. Remove everything in the source folder and create an index.js. Inside the index.js, we render something called hello Redux, and you can see it here on the screen. That's the point we are at. And after that, we have installed some library, Redux, React Redux, Redux Tongue, and Redux DevTool extension. Okay, so to start understanding about Redux, let me explain what is a reducer in Redux. So let me create a new file called reducer.js. So inside root reducer here, I will write down a initial state. So this is just an object that have a one value loading false. Okay, so this it's just an object, right? With the loading is false, and then I will write a function. I call it uh, block reducer. This one is just a function, right? And this one take two arguments. One is the state, which is the I set it up by default is the initial state, and one argument is the action, and this function will first of all I will destructure type and payload from the action. So I assume that inside action now, I will have type and payload for every kind of actions. And next, I will create a switch command for the type. And then for the case that we have, let's say, block request, this is just a string, a simple string. So in this case, I return the copy of the state and rewrite loading to true. Then I will copy this code for the block request success and block request failure. For this kind of action, we just turn this to false. And by default, we return state. So let me finish the function and then we can play around with that to understand how it's work. Okay. So now let me copy this function to the console. I just copy it here, and let's play around with that a little bit. So let me define constant state equal initial state. Okay. So now state is an object that contains loading is false. Just simple JavaScript. Okay. So now I will call block reducer, which is a function. I pass in the state. Okay. And I pass in an object. Inside the object, I have type is block request. Okay, this is how I execute the function block reducer. What is the result? Let's spend 1 minute to think about what you will have if I hit enter. And feel free to give me a question, an answer for that. What do you think, Tiên? Okay, so let's be hit enter first. So we have in the output just a object, which is loading is true.
So it was a loading true.
So so why is that? What happened here? We are actually just execute this function, right? We pass in the state, which is the initial state. Loading is false, and we pass in an action, and inside the action object, this has type is a string block request. Right? So inside the reducer, it just compare the value of type here with block request or block request success or anything here. Right? So in this case, the type is block request. So it will jump into here. And this code is just copy everything from state and we replace loading to true. Right? Okay, do you understand this line? This we talk about it in the restructure the spread syntax.
Yeah, for me, I get super confused when there's like all the state. So what is like, how can you define which state are you changing?
Yeah, I define which state I'm changing here. So, okay, let's give one more example. if I have another example, let's say state 2. So this is an object that have loading is false and user with the name Ming.
Mhm.
Okay. User, sorry, username Ming, like this, right? So step 2 is just an object with loading false and username Ming, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so now how can I override loading here into true? The syntax is I will copy everything from step 2 and then change loading here to true.
Mm.
Enter. So now loading is true and the user is stay the same. I haven't done anything with the user,
Okay.
right? Okay, so now next question is how can I change the name here to John? Okay, John, can you read me the answer for that? How can I change
So
Ming to John?
just change the user. Uh, no.
I have to copy everything from step 2,
Mhm.
right? So to keep the loading at the same.
Mhm.
And
And
then
then.
I have to define user.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And inside the user, uh, I have to copy everything from the old user. Because inside the user, it could have name, it could have gender, it could have something. I just
Mhm.
copy everything in the user here,
Mhm.
then change name to John,
Okay.
like this. And now the new object we have with the name is John.
Hmm.
Okay, one more example. If I have uh, set 2 equal uh, loading is false, user, let's keep name and email. So this is the user. Okay, so we have step 2 now. Inside the user, you have name and email. Okay,
Hmm.
so what happens if I run the old code? If I run uh, this, okay, so what happens if I just copy step 2 and in user, I do name change to John. Let's take a minute to think about the solution. So what will be the output if I run code like this?
Just gonna add or override the name and have the same email.
Okay, that is your guess, right? So let's take a look here. The email is gone because
Mm.
actually we have override uh, this user with uh, with this object, with this user.
Mm.
So the email is gone, right? So this is
Yeah.
the wrong way to replace the name John as the name John. So the
Mhm.
correct way to do it is we need to do one more step here to copy everything inside state2.user first. So to copy the email, the original name and email here first, and then override the name to John.
Mm.
Okay, so this is the same principle, just we have like two nested objects. So we have to do this. So copy everything and then override anything you want. Okay,
Okay.
so here in the output, we have name John and the email say here as the same.
So if that will be like the payload, or that's something different?
Exactly. So that is going to be the payload merging into the state.
All right.
Okay, so you good with this concept with the reducer?
Yeah.
So basically, we have the payload here.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we haven't used the payload. Right? We just change the loading into true here. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
basically, block reducer here is just a function. A function. If I call
Mm-hmm.
again block reducer and I pass in the state, and next I can pass in an action, right? Inside the action here, uh, I can type the type of the actions, right? What happens if I have just success here? So this is the code of the block reducer. What happens if I call block reducer state type success? So let me check. So now the state, the loading is false. Right? Um, so, okay, let me change the loading to true. So now inside state loading is true. Right? So now I call block reducer state type success. The question is, does it change the state or not? Okay, enter. The loading is still true. So it doesn't change the state because the type here is success, and the cases that uh, we cover for type is block success, block request success, and so this strings does not match with any cases here, right? So the reducer just do nothing, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so the block reducer here is basically just a function that can merge something in the action to the state. And the state start with the default value loading is false. And during the application running, it can be changed based on the data in the action. So, and how the data in the action can be merged into the state is defined by the reducer. So the reducer takes two inputs, which is state and actions, and return one output, which is the new state. We cool with the reducer, guys?
Yeah, it's still a little bit confusing, but better than before, so it's a win-win.
No, no, no. So today I don't want any confusion. Let's make sure we clear with X concept rather than
Mhm.
we don't move on if you don't 100%
Okay.
clear. So, okay. So reducer is a function. First of all, it's a function. And the input of
Mhm.
the function is the state and the action. Right? And the output is new state, right? A new state. So this is the input, the output, and based on the type of the action, we return a new object. Right? We can override something in the state based on the action here. Right?
Yeah.
It's just a simple function that's merge the data here into state and then return the new state.
Okay.
Okay. So now let's me because we're going to have we could have many reducer in our application. So let me create a reducer that's combine many reducer into one. And we need to import something called combine reducer. Right? The name explains itself from Redux. And here we export before uh, the combined reducer here, and we pass in an object that we define that block gonna be the block reducer. Okay. Later on, we could have action. I mean, off reducer, alert reducer, whatever, and then we just need to add it into here. Right. Okay, are we cool with this code, guys? We have a reducer, which is a simply just a function, right? And that function take a state, right? The state will be by default take this value, and based on the action here, it could be changed, right? The value inside the state could be changed based on depend on the action we have as the input. And in the end, because we can have many reducer, we combine them together in this code. And that's all, like 80% of Redux.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Okay, so now how can so next I will move on to the next 10%. Okay, to bring this reducer into our application, into our Hello Redux application, right? So next step, we need to define a store.js, which is a file to define our store. Okay, to define our store, our state, our global state. And in the store here, we need to import the create store function. We need to create a store, right? So let's create a store function from Redux, right? And and because we want to see it on the Chrome in the Redux DevTool extension, right? We need to import the compose with DevTool. So let me type in this library, right? And the function we want from it is the compose with DevTools from Redux DevTool extension, right? So this is just a debugging tool, right? And then we need to import our root reducer. We call it root reducer from our root reducer. So we import everything here as the root reducer in the store. Okay, so that is the libraries, and by default we have a initial state. So this is the state for global store. So it's just an empty object for now. And then we define our store. Our store is equal create store. We call the function create store. And inside the function here, we pass in the root reducer, which is the reducer that we export here. And next is just a function that can help us to see the dev tool. Oh, sorry, we need to state here also. So how can I not break it down into lines? Oops. Okay, so this is function to create the store for us, and it's take 3 arguments: the root reducer, the initial state, and then compose dev tool. Okay, so in the note here, because we use in the step 5, I think, when we start. Okay, so you can simply copy this code. So here we have one more new thing is the func here. So I will explain it later, but basically it's a middleware. It's a middleware to add into the Redux. So now let's just integrate it for here for now, and I will explain it later. So this is the store, and this store is basically a output of the function create store, and then we can export before this configuration of store. Okay, and in the last step to integrate that into our application, we need to import our store here in the index.js from store, and we need a something called provider for our application to provide this store to our application. We call it provider, or the name of this is provider. It's from React Redux. Okay, so again, we define a file called store where we create our store and export it. And in the index, we import that store and also import something called provider from the library React Redux. And this provider is going to be able to wrap our application like this. Is going to wrap our simple application, and here we define store equal store. Okay, come back to our application, click on state. Now you can see block loading false. So we have just bring this function reducer as a global store block into our application. So create the store, put it in the create store function, in the index.js, import provider, define store equals store, and wrap everything inside provider.
So with Redux, there's no need to pass like the props, and like if you just import everything from the store, you can use it anywhere. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So now we have a store here. That's
okay.
that's keep the state of our, that's keep the data, and from any component here in the tree can access to the store, to the data in the store, and without thinking about who is my parent or where does this come from, where the data comes from.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay, so yeah, and basically all of our store is this is a state. So the store is contain a state of your application or the data of your application. Right? Okay, so let me do one more step. So basically, we don't code in the index.js, right? We have something called app.js that's contain our application, right? And this is basically a component, a React component, right? And we can do our FACE to create our applications. And let me copy everything here inside this provider to the app.js here. And then inside index.js, we import app from our app. And then we put the app component here. Let me save it, and nothing changed. Right? The store is still here with the block loading false, nothing changed. I just bring everything inside here into a React component called app. Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Nothing changed, right? Okay. So in the app here, I will add a small thing called, I will check whether loading is true. Then if the loading is true, I will say h1 loading, right? Otherwise, I will say hello Redux. Right? Makes sense. Right? Just say our canary logic to check whether loading is true or not. So the error now is loading is not defined. And if I define a state for this app using the React hooks, the syntax is going to be constant loading set loading, right, is going to equal use state, and let's put true here. And we need to import use state as the hooks here. Right. So now our application is controlled by a state called loading, and by default it's true. When I change it to false, then it's become false.
Okay.
Cool. This is basic React. Right? Okay, but let's say I want to do something more fancy. All right. So I'm going to use a use effect here. that's going to have loading. Okay, sorry. First of all, this is the this is the React hooks to control the state inside the application, inside the component app. But we have a store, a global store now. Okay? So how can I link this component to the loading component on the store, in the global store? So what we have done here is we are controlling the state inside the component, right? So what we want is to let the store control the state of the application, right? This is what we want. Okay. So in order to do that, you need to import something called use selector. Does this sound familiar to you?
Yeah.
It's from React Redux. So now let me remove this state. Let me remove this state. And now I define constant loading is going to be use selector. And this is come from the state of the global store. And inside the state, I have to access to the block, right, to the block. Inside the state, I have to access to the block and access to loading. Block dot loading. And set it. So now this loading is not maintained by the app component. It's maintained by the reducer here, by the global state. So now let me change this to true. And you can see loading here. If I change the state inside the reducer here, so now this control the loading in the application, in the app component. Make sense? The principle is the same, right? Instead of using the state inside the app, like I just have done before, with loading set loading equal use state true or false here. So instead of doing this, we connect loading to the store using the use selector. So we are not maintain the state inside the app component. We maintain the data inside the store, right? Inside the store defined by the rooted user. Is this clear?
Everything makes sense.
Does it make sense? Does it make sense, guys?
Yes, a lot.
So instead, okay, so basically what we have learned in the previous week is learn how to use React hooks, and each component here maintain its state, right? Maintain its data by itself. Now we have something like outside the component, which is called the store here, which is global, and the data is maintained here in the user. Okay, so now in the next step, we will move to, so we have learned, so we have successfully set up the store here, but in order to control the data in the store, right, in order to control, to change the data here, we need to dispatch some actions, right? We need to, in order to change this state, in order to change this data, we need to dispatch some action. And the actions need to be an object that contain a type, which is just a simple string, right? To tell the reducer what kind of action it is. And the payload contain the data. But this doesn't necessarily to the payload to contain anything, right? So right now here, we know that for a block request, we just want to change loading into true, right? So actually payload here is optional. It doesn't need to be to contain any value, but the type is a must because the type here, based on the type, the reducer know what kind of action it is and know what should it do, what should it react, what should it, how should it merge, or how should it change the data in the state. So now in the next step, I'm going to dispatch some action. And in order to dispatch some action, I need to import dispatch. Use dispatch and then define dispatch inside the application using equal use dispatch. Right. So okay, so now I want to do something like this. Okay, I need to import user first. So now I want to show loading on the app, and 5 seconds later, remove loading or turn loading into true. So the effect would be the app will show loading in 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds, loading become false. It will show hello Redux. So the code is quite simple. We're going to dispatch, and we're going to dispatch just a simple object with the type block request. Okay, so what happened with this code? At the beginning of the app, when it's initialized or after it's did mount, we will dispatch a action called block request, and this action, based on the root reducer here, will turn the loading into true. And because the loading here is turned to true, this loading is listening to the loading in the state, right? So it will turn the return loading here in the application. Right. And then let me write next function is a set timeout, and this set timeout will dispatch another type of action, which is block request success after 5 seconds. Block request. Okay. Is false, loading to true. Sorry, I put it in the wrong way. 5,000 should be here. Okay, so now 5 seconds, loading become false and hello Redux. So here at the beginning, we dispatch block request. Right? And then after 5 seconds, we dispatch block request success. And it's just turned you can see here in the loading is true now, and after 5 seconds, loading is false. The reducer here is listening to the, is listening and is capture the event, capture the event block request first, and then after 5 seconds, a new action is dispatched, and basically those actions just turn the value loading here to true or false. So this is the next 10% of Redux. Does it make sense? What happens if block request takes more than 5 seconds? So block request here does nothing. I mean, block request, it's just a action, right? And actually this is a string, and the type is block request, and this does only one thing, that's to change loading to true. So this set timeout just to simulate the time we needed to do something, and then dispatch success after we have done that thing. Wait, but I want to check. We cool with this code first? What happened here with this code? So at the beginning, right? At the beginning, the loading is initialized by false, right? And in the app, we dispatch a action type block request, right? And then this action, when we take care of by the reducer, we just simply turn loading to true, and because the app loading is listening to the loading in the state, it will show this. Does it make sense?
Yes. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay, slow down, slow down. So now I will challenge you. Okay, so now I want to change hello here with something else. Let's say hello Coder School. And I want to control this by the store. I want to have the data hello something in the store, and this application is listening to that and show that data here. How can we do that, John?
So first you have to create the in store a variable that has,
let's say, name.
mm-hmm.
Okay, by default, let's say it's an empty string.
Mm-hmm.
How can I change the value in name?
So you have to create a case.
Yes. Let's call it change name. So what should I do in this case? I should return a new state. I should return a new state. What should I put in here? I change the name in the state to Coder School.
So you take all the states.
Exactly. And
the name and the name that you want to add.
like this, right?
The return is misspelled.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Now, what should I do? Okay, let me remove this dispatch. Right. So now it's hello Redux. It's still hello Redux. So how can I change this to hello Coder School? How can I link this name to here?
So you call it there, so like a const name, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like a uselector state, like the arrow state that name, no, that log, that name.
That name, yes. Let's save it. And I need to change the data here to name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now name is hello empty here. Why is that?
There's an empty string, right?
Yeah, because at the beginning, name is an empty string. That's all. How can I change this to Coder School?
Using dispatch.
Exactly. Can you tell me the syntax inside this step?
It's curly braces, type, and change name, I guess it was. Change.
Voila, that's it. Awesome, John.
Good. Nice.
So that's it. Right? We access to the data, and we use dispatch to control the data by dispatching some action. That's all. Congratulations, John.
I can graduate for
Anyone want to take a challenge? Tiên, do you want to take a challenge? We cannot hear you, Tiên.
Yeah, give me, I will try. Thank you.
Go for it, too.
Okay, Tiên. This is gonna be harder. Okay, this is gonna be harder.
How?
Okay, so let me remove everything. Let me remove the name here. Okay, so now inside the reducer, I have something for user. This is a empty object at the beginning. And let's say when the block request is success, I want to change the user here to be an object that contains an username. Okay. So if the block request is success, I want to change the content of the user to be named Ming. And then I want to show it here in the hello Ming. Right. You get that? So again, we have a new variable in the state for user, which is an object that's contain the user information. And after block request success, I want to change the name of the user to Ming and show it in the app. What should I do?
So we make a case. Say inside the switch, another case. After that, we set the string and return state dot
Sorry. Can
state
you
dot user.
You mean here?
Yeah, I make a new case.
No. I mean after block request success. So we already have that case.
Okay, so I return here. Return. Yeah, curly braces. State. Okay, state dot user. No, user.
User, right.
User dot name. User, we have name inside. So we will join.
Like this, right? But user can have many more information, not only name.
Just name and address.
So we need to copy the user here first and override name inside. Right. Okay, that's good. So this is how you can change the name in block request. So the UI here is still hello nothing. How can I change the app now?
Now, we set a name equal to use selector state state dot user dot name.
You have to access
State block user dot name and
right. So now let me add name here, right? Save it. Sorry, it's still empty.
And in the effect, use effect,
yes,
on the dispatch type block request success.
Wow. Thank you very much. Very good, very good. Okay, one
So,
more bonus.
I mean,
One more bonus. So the name here is hardcode. Ming is hardcode. I want to control that value when I dispatch block request. I want to control. I want to control the name here. How can I do it? So Ming here is now hard coded. I want to control that value and pass that value through the actions to change the state dynamically. What should I do?
So mean that you in here you will remove the main and put only string here.
Hmm? Okay, let me tell you. So now instead of hard code Ming here, I put the payload here. So remember in one action we have type and payload. So we put the payload here, save the code for now, and come to the app. Right? When I dispatch block request success, I have payload and I pass in a string for awesome in.
hmm.
Can you see it? This payload, it just contains some value, right? Action payload is contains some data, and in the root reducer here, I pass the payload to the name, right? And then it will be merged into user.name, and then it will affect hello name on my app.
So the dispatch
But
is always gonna.
So the dispatch here is dispatching an action. In one action, it has the type and the payload. The type define what kind of action it is. The payload is storing some data.
So is the dispatch always gonna be like inside of the use effect, or it can be on any hook?
It doesn't need to be inside use effect. But
so it can
like
be
use effect is the code in use effect will be run after the component mount. We want to dispatch something after the DOM element is already set up. We want to generate the DOM element first, right? Before we can dispatch them later.
Okay.
Okay, but do you understand the concept payload?
Yes.
but I remember in the first day we learned the Redux. I remember they keep the payload and type and payload in the index.js, right? So so in here we keep in the app.js, so it doesn't matter about the components. Do we connect with the reducer for this payload?
So the connecting to the reducer is controlled by the this function from the Redux React Redux. Yeah, but I want you to focusing on like understand action, contain type and payload, and we can dispatch um, an action just like a simple object like this. And we can play around passing data to control the data in the state by dispatching action, right? Okay, guys. So usually we don't put the string here like this, right? We don't want to put the string here like this because if you want to change something, you need to go to the reducer and change those strings, right? We want to have one place to store all of those strings, right? So now let me define a file called block.constant.js. So in here, we just export constant, and we export the block constant. We call it like block request is equal a string like block request, and we have block request uh, success and block request failure. Right? And here we just define 2, 3 simple string like this. And come back to the reducer, we're going to import everything as types in block.constant and refactor our code a bit. So instead of a hard code string here, we have types dot sorry, this need to be from types dot block request, types dot block request request, and types dot block request failure. I just do one thing, that's to print the string here in one file for export here. Okay, so the app doesn't work because we changed the string. Let me bring it back. Block constants. We need to use the block constants. Where is the do I have any typo somewhere? Block constants, block constants.
It's not type instead of types.
Okay, so this is not, yeah. Sorry. This is type, and this is a block request. Yeah, okay, so the app works like this, similar. Sorry for the typo. I just bring all of the string into one file here, right? So it's easier to maintain. Right? Okay, and in the app.js, usually we don't directly dispatch action like this, right? We will collect all of the function to handle the action in something called like block.action.js. And inside here, we're going to have, we define a block request function. Block request function. So this one is a middleware. We are going to the Redux tongue middleware. Okay, and here in the block request function, we will copy like everything here. Let me copy everything here and put it in the block actions. And then export to for block request. Right. And then in app, we import dash actions from the block actions. We import block actions from block actions. Right. And here in the user effect, we call dispatch dispatch block actions dot block request. Oh, sorry, I need to call this. This is a function, right? Block request. So nothing changed. I just moving code around, right? To easier to maintain. So now I have one file that's contain a function. It's middleware function. I will explain later. But basically, nothing changed. I just move things around. I have a file to contain the constant. I have a file to contain the action. And in the app now, my code is very clean. Right? I just dispatch something here, and all of the logic is inside the action. Right? And okay, yeah, and that's all, guys. That's everything about fundamental Redux. So now compared to our application from yesterday, right? Let's look at the home page. So inside the home page, we dispatch block action block request. Right? This one will trigger block actions block request here. First of all, it will dispatch block request with the payload null. We have nothing here to pass to the state. And this line will be executed in the block reducer, which basically just changes the loading into true. Nothing else, right? And then come back to the block actions. Is connect to the server. This take a while. Right? We need to wait for it for a while. And after we successfully get the data, we dispatch a block request success. And with the payload now is the response data from the server. This is come from the REST response from the server. And this line will be taken care by the block request success here. And what it does is first turn the loading into false, and then replace the blocks here, which is an empty string, empty array, with the data from the server. Right? And in the home page, because we have a variable blocks, is listening to state.blocks.blocks. It will receive the data when we dispatch the action block request success. Right. So after the action block request success here. Right. So after we dispatch this action, we will take all of the data inside the payload, which is the response by the server, into the blocks here. And then the home page, the block in the home page will receive the data and trigger this map function to generate the block path for us. Does it make sense now?
Yeah, better than yesterday.
Okay. Any question, guy? Otherwise, I will stop the recording here to keep it short enough. Okay.
Yep.
So to summarize, today we learned that the store is maintained by the reducer, and the reducer is basically just a simple function that takes two input, which is the state and the action, and then return one output, which is the new state. And depend on the type of action, we can change the data in the state and return a new state. So if it's basically reducer is simple function that can modify the data in the global state, right, of our application. So, and to integrate the reducer in the store into our application, we create we use the function create store. Right? So basically, we just copy this to any application you want to view with the Redux function and the Redux DevTool extension here. And then in the index.js, we import provider and wrap our application with the provider with the store is defined by the store. And that will give us a store here, global store for our application. And then all of the application in all of the components in our application can access to the data in the store using the use selector here, right? So the green line here for the component to listen to some data in the store is executed by the use selector here. And when we sorry, I mean the blue line here, right? So this component is listening to any data here with the blue line here. And when we want to change something in the store, we dispatch some action. We dispatch the action here, which is a function in the block.actions. And depend on the payload and the type of the action here, we can control the data in the reducer. And is everything else is stay the same. So instead of creating the data and maintain it inside the component using the React hooks, we used it like before. We use the global store to control the state of the application for us. So we don't have to think about how can I pass the data or the state of the parent component to the children component. We have one place to maintain the data, and all of the component in the tree are listening to that global store. Okay, and that's it for today, guys. And